Yeah, so okay, let's start with the beginning. Start
Mm,
with who is Joey and tell us a bit about your family, your upbringing.
okay. My name is Joey, as you say. I'm a 39-year-old rugby coach, and that's what I do for a living. But most importantly, I've got a wife, an awesome wife. Her name is Zinzi. She's an accountant. She gets to work from home, and more importantly, she gets to follow me as I follow this dream. And she really lays an incredibly supportive hand. Like now, we've been away. This is my third week away from home, and
Mm.
she's got those two little girls, Ziana and Zanani, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and she's looking after them by herself. So
Sure.
if that's not going well, you can imagine then it would interrupt my focus where I am now. But because she does that mother and wife role so well, it
Mm.
allows me to focus on what I do. So obviously she's precious to the whole thing. When I was growing up, I never understood why when people divorced, the wife would get like more than half the stuff. But now it makes sense. They actually deserve about 80% because you wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to do anything without them. So it's awesome to journey with her. We are like-minded in our faith. So that really settles a whole lot of things and makes a lot of decisions for us. Um, what else? Yeah, I think we just team really well.
Mm.
She's not a conventional stay-at-home. She's a woman who's chasing her career as well and wants to be at
Mm.
the top of her career. She worked so hard coming from a poor upbringing. She just wanted to get into an environment and make a difference. Originally, make money, but obviously, as she became a believer over time, it's to have influence within the workplace. So it's been a joy to watch her develop in that space as well. And I also want to support her and make sure she can climb up that corporate ladder as high as she can. And again, not just for the financial value, but for the amount of lives that she can influence in the ways that she
Mm.
leads. She leads in her own unique manner. It's precious to watch. It's very different to the way I would do it, but she still gets it right, and I'm super proud of her.
And as I was looking on LinkedIn to kind of see how to intro you, because we have quite a lot of American viewers, and I don't think they always really understand rugby and how the system works here. But basically, you have coached three of the most major rugby union teams, which is kind of like an NFL team. You're on the coaching staff, have been now for numerous, and wherever you've gone, you've won numerous trophies, whether it be at junior levels, at Curry Cup, I mean, even now the European Challenge Cup. There's just so many things. But you've also been involved with South Africa. I think South African A,
Mm.
um, the junior baby box. But the interesting thing to me is that as I was looking through your LinkedIn page, I saw that you played for the Bulls and you played for the Tuks Varsity Cup. You played for the junior box. And I did not know that, to be honest. I feel a little bit ashamed because, but I think that's actually to your credit because we've now known each other since 2005, and that must have been happening during that time. So you were a baby book, what, 2006 or 2005?
2006. 2006, yeah.
And I mean, we knew each other, we met each other, and I never knew that you had been performing at such a high level. And I think that's such a great, it's for me, it's such a great witness of your character and your humility because every time that I came into contact with you, with the numerous things that we were doing, you were always just humble and you were crossing barriers. I mean, you were always talking to me in Afrikaans and asking me how I'm doing. Meanwhile, I'm honestly thinking you're just a really nice guy, not knowing that, I mean, in the world's terms, you're technically like a celebrity type of person. Um, so I think that, I don't know, has that sort of demeanor, has that played any role in the way that you have coached at various of these? Because I can imagine you're in the environment where you're coaching two-time World Cup champions. You're in an environment where you coaching people who've been playing rugby probably their whole life and they know so much. Like, does that humility, does that crossing the barrier, like, does some of that influence how you do your job? And is some of that maybe why you have been so successful?
Yeah, just a couple of things there, Mr. Sadi, just to qualify some statements. I'm definitely not a celebrity, that's for sure. And also, I think the best way to answer this is I've got a coaching philosophy, and I try and make it a life philosophy, is to
Mm,
be really clear, really be simple, and to be relational. Those three
mm,
elements. So if you think about what you were speaking about in those campus outreach days of ours, it was just to be relational, just to get
mm,
to know other people. And then one of the most significant things ever, I coach with a guy, his name is Harky Kruger. I always quote him on this. He always said, rugby is what you do and not who you are. So
mm,
that's always helped me with my identity, that if I rock up into a space like the spaces we were in, I didn't carry this rugby player or now rugby coach thing. It's just you, Joey. That's who you are.
mm,
And I think it's, I don't know, 1 Corinthians 15:10 or 10:15 that says, by the grace of God, I am what I am. His grace to me
mm,
was without effect. I worked harder than all of them, but yet not I, but the grace of God that is with me. So it's always just a constant reminder in my head that whatever, like if trophies have been won, whatever, it's not because of me. It's just that I've been given grace to work hard, and then
mm,
it's all by grace. So it's literally, it's not a super spiritual answer. It's literally the grounding of how I approach the opportunities that I've had, both as a player and now as a coach. So like you said, if for American context, I watched that series Quarterbacks. Um, so it's amazing how to watch the Kansas City Chiefs and how they're a different culture to. I'm very fortunate having been at three of the four franchises or NFL teams in that context in South Africa, and each of them do things in their own way. So I've had the
mm,
privilege to learn what is good in that environment, what can be done better, what is good in that environment can be done better. So I'm just loading all this information in the background, and that's what I use ultimately when you speak about the LinkedIn profile, just to build concepts. Those are all original frameworks and principles based on my experiences in the environment, and then articulating those in a way that can be packaged and given to other people to use to make them better.
mm. Yeah. So maybe share a little bit more about just the creation of Team IP3, um, what you guys have been doing, and how you're seeing it impacting some corporations, some companies, some schools.
Yeah, great question. So the name Team IP3, that's probably where the meat of it lies. I'm a big believer that anything that works has a leader, it has a team, and then it influences the world. So if you take in our biblical context, if you've got Jesus, who's the leader, he's got disciples who are the team, and what they did over 2,000 years ago, it's still having influence now. And I
Mm,
believe all teams, all structures are built that way. So I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of people doing leadership training. There's a lot of people doing team leadership, team cohesion, team dynamics, change management. But I want to do it in a way that speaks to the heart of it. So the name Team IP3, the IP3 is the secret, is that we believe that everything is based on your identity, then
mm,
your purpose, your psyche, and then only the processes. So most people, if you ask them to do something around teams or around leadership, would go straight into the processes and the plans. I'm like, well, that's the surface. That stuff is going to go away. You're going to feel good, get goosebumps, go away, and then you're going to go back to what you do. But if what we're speaking about addresses your identity, who are you as a group? Who are
mm,
you as an individual? Knowing your strengths, knowing your work-ons, being aware of your work-ons, which people are now call self-awareness. But I just try to use basic human language. That's what it is. It's not,
mm,
I'm good at this, I'm less good at that, and I'm putting this in place to know that. I'm at least be aware of it. That's your identity. Then your purpose is, why do you do what you do? Beyond the bottom line, beyond making money, beyond influencing people, what is the reason why you do that? And then the
mm,
collective, the psyche is collectively, how do we think about what we're doing? Because when tough times come, or even during good times, we need to be thinking similarly about how we do things and how we see challenges and how we see success. So that's Team IP3. And the influence is just, yeah, I just believe what we have is different. It's really trying
mm,
to take that consulting world and take it away from PowerPoints and a theory that's often out of context, and just trying to put into basic human language, basic context, and just taking principles and frameworks from lived out sporting experiences. Last one, I don't want to speak a lot. And the reason why I think sport is relevant is because sport is a microcosm of the world. Just
mm,
the adversity, success, failure, being dropped, being hailed as wonderful one week and the next week you're nothing. So all of those dynamics happen in such an intense, how do I say, it's intense, and often it happens often in an intense manner in life, you're able to extract those things there to help people who are doing this in the corporate space or in real life.
Yeah, that's actually so insightful. Specifically the identity element. I can imagine as a rugby player, as the people that you're coaching, they must be having not identity crises, but like I can imagine working your whole life towards something, achieving it, and then let's say at 30 you're now retired. It's like, okay, I'm retired. I never really took the opportunity to go study. Okay, maybe a lot of them did, but maybe some of them didn't. And now you're like, okay, what's next? I was watching this documentary called The Weight of Gold, where Michael Phelps basically talks about his struggle with depression after going to the Olympics and winning and coming back and be like, now what? Do I put
Sure.
myself through another 4 years to have that high again? What are the people who spent their whole lives working towards that and then don't even get a medal? What are they going through? Like, who am I if I'm not a swimmer? Who am I if I'm not a sprinter? I mean, a guy like Akani Simbine, like that guy breaks my heart. Like that he's been in three of the last Olympic Games finals, but unfortunately, because of a split second, he never got a medal. And how that must be a struggle for professional athletes in terms of who they are. How, is that something that they struggle with? Is that something they're wrestling with? And is there a way in which you play a role in helping them through that?
Yeah, you've struck a chord there. It's something that I know I've been having these discussions since when I was in varsity, because I had the fortunate opportunity when I was playing that one of the coaches who coached me forced me to study. He says, Joey, you'll 100% study. I don't know how far you're going to make it in rugby, but I want to make sure that when you leave my context, you've got something outside of the sport that can keep you going. And his advice was good, but it's getting even better as I get older because he didn't only give me a marketing degree that could get me off my feet if I stopped playing rugby, like only had a 5-year career, but he gave me life outside of the sport. So
Mm.
suddenly I could be in a campus outreach group, I could be in a res life, I could be in a student life. So my life existed. Rugby is just one of the things that I did. But for some of these guys, like you say, the Phelps of the world, these guys have to give themselves fully to their careers. And if you take it, their peers' careers are probably doing that. They honor, they're increasing. I'm finishing varsity, getting into a job, managing director, executives, they're doing that. Where the rugby player's career is sort of starts there. Like you make
Mm,
all the money at the highest, and when you're at your prime, it's sort of going down, and hopefully you can get it to plateau. So there's two types of people there. There's guys who make enough money out of the sport. So there is no financial damage of them not having studied. But that's a very few group. It's very, very few. Most of them have to go back and work. But even the guy who makes all the money, what do you do with your life? If you're
mm,
35 years old and you get up, you don't have to work anymore. But goodness, what are you going to do for the next 45 years? So that's where the purpose part of that IP comes in is to say, well, what are you going to exist for, right? That's the best case. The worst case is the guys who just haven't made enough money to continue. So they actually have to go work in the workplace, invest themselves into that again. And to be honest, our lives are high pressure. So you can see why the guys get paid quite a bit of money, but we don't work many hours, if that makes sense.
mm,
The concept of clocking in at 8 o'clock and leaving at 5 is
yeah.
so foreign to these guys. And for the amount of money they would be earning then compared to what they've used to be earning is a tough thing. So I'm not doing enough. I need to be doing a heaps more.
Mm,
But I'm with friends of mine. We're trying to create an organization called Second Half. So first half is when the guys are playing and doing well and all the glamour, the Twitter and whatever, all those nice things that they're getting and the likes on social media. But how we're trying to say, how can we maximize their first half in order to give them a second half? Second half is
mm,
when you are done playing. And then how do we then set you up for that? So we're trying to say, okay, can we build an ecosystem around these people in the first half? Because people are willing to give them bursaries, whatever, because of their status at the time. So to
yeah.
make sure that we're investing in the first half, so the second half can be a lot easier because there's so many sad second half stories. You can
Mm,
go. NFL, anything, any sport code you want to go look to. If somebody did a study, I think it'll be scary to see where 90% of the guys land up post-career, guys and girls.
Yeah, no, that is, I think you're doing a great job. And that, I think that is such a massive need. I mean, you see the documentaries, you're hearing stories where they just never studied and the thing is, there's a lot of people that you can remember. Like, I think 20 years from now, if you say Siya Kolisi, people will know who he is.
Mm,
20 years from now, if you ask who AB de Villiers is, people will know he is.
mm,
But what about the thousands of other guys that, if you had to ask, like, who was the scrum half for the Lions in 2001? Like, I don't know.
yeah.
Like, but how do you, like, because those guys are now in the workplace. They are just doing probably a 9 to 5, or maybe they're coaching. I don't know what they're doing, but those thousands of people, like, yeah, so it's such a big need. As Resource Global, we work with young marketplace leaders, and identity is one of our main things, because it's not just professional athletes, it's everyday people going to work who wrestle with, what do people think of me? Like, am I good enough? And even the purpose thing, for us, that's the bedrock of just understanding how God created work before the fall. It's not a curse. It's actually a blessing. Because when you talk to people who retire or people who lose their jobs, they lose all sense of meaning. And a lot of them go into depression. So it's actually a blessing and a gift from God that gives Adam and Eve the role to name the animals, to work the ground. And this all happens before sin enters the world. So work is obviously very unique for your industry, but I love the way that you guys are thinking of creative ways for that second half. For our next question, just tell us some of the lessons that you have learned on your journey, like any sort of life lessons that you think could be helpful to some of our young marketplace leaders or anyone listening.
Um, yeah, that's a good one. I would say in each context, I learned various things. So I would say starting at the Bulls, where I played junior rugby and then went back to coach after COVID. Jake White was there when we returned to coach there after COVID, 2020 to 2022. I think we were stupid. We played like in 5 tournaments, won 3, and the other 2 we played in finals. So it was
Yeah.
such a successful time. And what I
I,
got to
I'm a
see.
bull, by the way, just for our audience. So, and Jake White is a world champion winner with the Springboks. So the fact that there was so much success in that season with the Bulls is great for me, and the fact that Joey left to go to our competitors is not great for me.
I'm gonna laugh and say they haven't won since, but it's got nothing to do with me. I promise you, it's just coincidence. That's just a joke. It's I learned from him the power of vision. Because when he first arrived there, the Bulls had won 23 trophies, and then he made the theme 24. So everything, there were 24 plackets, whatever, or posters put up everywhere around Loftus, just to remind people that what are we here for? We were here to win the 24th trophy. And he didn't mince his words about why he came to the Bulls. He came to the Bulls to make them win. And I just love that about the man, that you know exactly what you're getting, and he's so clear on his vision. And then on the back of that vision is to bolster values, 2 or 3, maximum 5 behaviors that we're going to live by in order to get to that vision. So I just love the simplicity of how that vision and values mixed happen at the Bulls. That was as a coach. When I was there as a youngster, I just loved their structure. I love the way that it has a sustainable model in place. It's almost as if the senior team um, was the model, and then us as juniors were the microcosm of what's happening there. So if they ever lost somebody here, it wasn't about we're going to go buy somebody. We've got the next guy in place to go do that. So when Victor Matfield is the best 5 lock in South Africa, the junior player with us in his position was Wilhelm Steenkamp. So as soon as Victor was going to leave, Wilhelm was going to take his place. So it's
Mm,
Piers Spies was going to take Donnie Rousseau's place. So it was so well orchestrated, and I learned
mm,
that. I'm like, wow, that's why systems and structures are meant to be in place. They're meant
yeah.
to um, create sustainability. They're meant to think future. If we lose this, who's going to come in? So I thought those two elements were incredibly helpful in my experience at the Bulls. When I was at the Lions, there was a sense of that was a personal experience. I was there for 9 years, and started as a team manager who learned how to become a defense coach on the job. So there I learned the value of looking at an organization and taking an opportunity. Because at the time in 2011, defense coaching wasn't a thing like it is now. Everyone was
Mm,
focused on attack. So I just saw the gap. I loved defense when I was playing. So John Mitchell was the defense coach at the Lions and the head coach then. So I just asked him questions. What are you doing here? I saw this drill of yours. How do I do that? So I learned the value of taking opportunity and increasing yourself within an organization. And because there's always more in us, we can always do things better. And longevity. The fact that I stayed there for 9 years allowed me a platform to be under 19 coach and a 21 coach, Vodacom Cup coach. So I grew through the system all the way to Super Rugby, which was the highest level, like the American audience, the NFL like setting. So if you stay the course, sometimes
mm,
it's about staying the course. I'm sure in those
mm,
9 years, I probably felt like leaving at least 100 times, but just staying the course, you buy credibility, you buy trust, and you can grow within a system. So there was learning that. Coming to the Sharks, I learned balance. People in Durban like to be chilled. They like to relax.
mm,
The pace of life is convenient, especially for my young family at the moment. But how do we work really, really hard in a spurt and then just completely switch off? Get in your car, go home, enjoy the beach, enjoy the coffee shops, enjoy the chilled environment. So that's made me better because I was, if you know, living in Johannesburg, it's
oh,
like living in New York. It's you always on, always the next thing, always better, better, more, more, more. But Durban has taught me that you can do high intensity work in the period you're meant to work, but after that, just relax, give over,
mm.
rest, prep for the next day, enjoy your family, enjoy your friends, enjoy the fruit of your labor. So I would say those are the ones. But ultimately, the biggest thing that I'd want to leave with your audience is that whole identity and purpose, just to keep revisiting those two. It's
Mm.
just it's such a good true north to find. It's such a if you lose your way, it helps you get back. If you are doing well, it reminds you of why you're doing well. But and if you think about the story of Jesus, not to over spiritualize this thing, it's he gets baptized and it says, "You are my son with whom I'm well pleased," right?
Mm.
And then after that, Jesus goes on and he starts the ministry that we know about with healing people. So it's such a key moment of in that moment, his identity was affirmed again. You are my son.
Mm.
You're a son.
Mm.
You've got a father, and I'm pleased with you. Wow. Okay. From that place, go function. And that's probably part of the reason why the team identity thing happened is that we need to establish identity ASAP, and that is a strong foundation. If we have that in place, there's no limit to how far we can grow whatever it is that we're busy with.
Oh, yeah, no, so good. So from those life lessons, what advice would you give to people from recent graduates to like 35? So people, young professionals, people who've just started out, from your journey, from your experiences, from your life lessons, what advice would you give to young professionals trying to make it in the workplace at the moment?
Yeah, great question. I would say there's a book that I forget this guy's name. It's called Good to Great. And in it, he looked at companies who were really good, and he
Mm,
said, how did some stay good and others become great? I forget the author, but in it he drew these three concentric circles. I hope that makes sense. So in
mm,
like that, and he said, what are you passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And can you get paid for that? So
mm,
it's almost finding, I would say, spend so much time with people around you within a community figuring out that because once you've got that you won't work a day in your life. I know it sounds like, okay, tell me something more realistic, but it's so true.
mm,
Like for me as a rugby coach, I believe I can be one of the best in the world at it. I get paid a sufficient enough to look after my family with it, and I'm passionate about it. I love it. I never wake up one morning. I can do a video session for 3 hours here, which I'll do after this to prepare for next week's game, and not a day or a second of it feels like work. So I
mm.
would say before going and running, let's first sit down, get a community around you just to give you advice of who are you? What are your strengths? What are you really good at? And what's things that you can avoid and figuring that out. And I think once you do that well, your journey becomes easier. Because I think sometimes we start running before we know who's running. But if we can
Mm,
know who's running and why they're running, I think then the running happens easier and it can happen longer. There'll be more duration because that's probably the last piece of advice. It's a marathon. It's
mm,
never a sprint. It's such a marathon. At 39 now, almost turning 40, the things that I was dreaming about at 25, some of them haven't happened yet, and it's okay. The
mm.
journey's still going on. God willing, I'll live 80 years and there's still half a life to go, still to do a whole heap of stuff. So it is a marathon.
Sure. So good. So good. But yeah, Joey, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. As you guys are in Europe now, preparing to play against Benetton, hopefully you enjoy a little bit of Italy, a little bit of pasta, and but yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for giving it to us and investing into some of our young marketplace leaders. And all the best. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for breaking up my morning. I've enjoyed talking to you. It's good to see you again.